the stage is set. The world's top paleontologists are watching. A man steps forward claiming that he's found a species no one has ever seen before, a discovery that could rewrite the dinosaur family tree. Murmurs spread through the crowd. This could be historic. But what they don't know is, he is not just chasing glory, he's after revenge. And what he's about to unveil will unleash decades of chaos, bitter rivalries, and one colossal mistake. It's one of the wildest twists in the normally boring world of paleontology, and it nearly went unnoticed. Find out what happened in the infographic show, The Most Embarrassing Discoveries Scientists Wish They Could Forget. In the 19th century, digging up dinosaurs wasn't just science. It was a high-stakes battlefield of egos and ambition. The competition was so intense it became known as the Great Dinosaur Rush, or the more epic, the Bone Wars. From the moment the first fossil was unearthed, paleontologists knew that one big discovery could cement your legacy, and two paleontologists, Edward Drinker Cope and Othniel Charles Marsh, were heated rivals who were locked in a race to outdo each other. After a series of public spats, Marsh seemed to have a new trump card: the discovery of a medium-sized sauropod named the Brontosaurus. It would become one of the most famous discoveries in dinosaur history. Or was it? That's a complex story that would span 3 centuries. Marsh's discovery was ultimately a fraud. He had combined the body of a young Apatosaurus with the skull of a different species, like some kind of Jurassic Park Frankenstein. But because the dinosaur game was so new, he fooled everyone. The paleontological con would only be discovered in the early 20th century, when scientists realized that the Brontosaurus and Apatosaurus were in fact the same dinosaur, sparking decades of confusion for dino-obsessed kids everywhere. But the tale didn't end there. In 2015, after centuries of fossil research, scientists made a stunning reversal. They found that what had once been dismissed as a mix-up actually described 2 distinct subspecies, different enough for one to officially reclaim the name Brontosaurus. And several times, scientists jumped the gun and threw everyone into a panic. It was 1996 and NASA had never been closer to Mars. They hadn't landed there, Mars had come to them. An ancient meteorite blasted off of the red planet millions of years ago had crash-landed on the Earth, offering scientists their first real chance to study a chunk of Martian rock up close. It wouldn't be long before they discovered something incredible: evidence of organic bacteria buried deep in the rock. Word soon got out. Life on Mars had been discovered, and it was confirmed by NASA scientist David McKay. It was the biggest announcement in human history, proof of life beyond Earth. Scientists everywhere dove into the data, eager to confirm what NASA had found. But the closer they looked, the more cracks began to show. Some experts pointed out that the so-called microfossils could have formed through non-biological processes. Others noted that the rock had likely formed at temperatures too extreme for life to survive. As the evidence piled up, the excitement gave way to skepticism. Eventually, even NASA had to admit they might have jumped the gun. And that one uncle, the one that's banned from family gatherings, quietly put away his tinfoil hat. For now. And sometimes a discovery is accurate, but it's just not worth it. One of the most fascinating subjects in nature is the lifespan of animals. While humans are above the average for the animal kingdom, regularly living into their 80s, there are some animals that leave us in the dust, like the giant tortoise or the Greenland shark, which can live well over a century. And then there's the quahog, a slow-growing mollusk that makes even those lifespans look short. When scientists pulled one from the icy seabed off Iceland, they froze it for transport. What they discovered next left them stunned. It was maybe the oldest animal ever found, and they just killed it. When scientists first examined the quahog shell, they counted growth rings enough to estimate it was over 500 years old. But that was revised. It was actually more than 600 years old. But it wouldn't be getting any older. Quahogs can survive a lot, just not being turned into a popsicle. Outrage quickly followed that such a remarkable animal could have been killed, but the scientists defended themselves, explaining that there was no way to know its age when it was discovered. Lessons learned, valuable data gathered, and hopefully no repeat performances. Except there was. Trees might just be the most ancient living organisms on the Earth, as the truly gigantic ones seem to have no upper limit to their growth. That was the case for Prometheus, a massive bristlecone pine in California that had been around for longer than anyone could imagine. By 1963, it had caught the attention of researchers who were stunned by what they found. Prometheus wasn't just old, It was ancient. Not only did it outdate the United States, but it had been standing since the dawn of the Bronze Age. It was over 4,800 years old, older than the pyramids of Giza, but humans would be its undoing. In 1963, grad student Donald Curry was trying to take core samples from the tree. In the process, he managed to break several pieces of equipment, and that is when the frustration kicked in. In a moment of exasperation, he asked the local park rangers if he could just cut it down, and the park rangers, seemingly disinterested, handed him an axe. Curry then had the pleasure of explaining to everyone that he had discovered the oldest non-clonal organism on the Earth and had promptly chopped it down. The repentant scientist did manage to get the surrounding area designated a national park so Prometheus's fellow trees could grow and grow. The next scientist left a big legacy, but not the kind that anyone would want. In the 1960s, the computer age was just beginning. These new machines would soon control everything from power plants to space shuttles. But first, a team of scientists would have to write the code. One of those scientists was Tony Hoare, who was building the successor to the early programming language ALGOL 60. And while designing it, Hoare introduced a small placeholder, a reference called null, meant to represent something that was undefined or missing. It was a simple solution to a complex problem. But that tiny placeholder would make its way into the final language and proceeded to drive programmers insane for the next 60 years. Nearly every major programming language that followed built on the foundations that Hoare had helped create, and most of them inherited the null reference. This meant that programmers everywhere, even today, are still forced to write extra code, checks, and workarounds just to avoid unexpected crashes. It became such a persistent issue that Hoare himself later had called it his billion-dollar mistake. But despite this, it doesn't negate Hoare's accomplishments. This unique error has provided a lot of information on how programming works over the decades. And if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. The Soviet Union was a golden age of science, if you didn't care too much about dogs surviving space missions. But there is no question that the powerful rival to the US took full advantage of the Cold War to push the boundaries of discovery, including potentially altering one of the building blocks of life. In the 1960s, they claimed to have discovered a new form of water, called polywater. By filtering water through narrow tubes, it would become denser, freeze at lower temperatures, and boil at higher temperatures. The working theory was that the water molecules themselves were somehow coagulating. But this bizarre finding didn't turn out to match reality. Word of polywater's discovery spread around the world, and soon scientists in many different countries were working to uncover its secrets. They succeeded, but not in the way that anyone expected. Soon it was clear that polywater wasn't a new scientific compound at all, but the result of the filtering process introducing new impurities to the water. And just like that, the mystery of polywater disappeared from labs everywhere. In Soviet Union, water evaporates your job prospects. Generally, if something seems to violate the laws of nature, it probably is worth another look. There are a few immutable laws of physics, and one of them is that nothing is faster than light. The fundamentals of this were explored by Albert Einstein, and every study since has confirmed that light is pretty much the peak of speed in the universe, at least until 2011. That was when scientists examined how long it took neutrinos to fly from Switzerland to Italy. They discovered that the tiny subatomic particles won the race against light by 60 nanoseconds. It would redefine everything we knew about physics. At least it would have if it wasn't a complete blunder. The next year was spent exploring the implications, trying to figure out how this was possible, but no one got the right answer. The culprit turned out to be a malfunctioning cable, which had screwed up the clocks on the experiment. The entire thing was a flub of basic technology, not a historic discovery. And while the scientists didn't get credit for discovering something faster than light, they did wind up serving as a very memorable cautionary tale for why you should always double-check your hardware. And it wasn't the only time something unexpected gummed up the works. The early days of the universe are something that has always fascinated scientists. We know all about the creatures that ruled the Earth for hundreds of millions of years before us, but that is a tiny blip in time compared to the universe. The era surrounding the Big Bang and the process of forming planets and the building blocks of life is still largely a mystery, but scientists have theorized that primordial gravitational waves ripple in the very fabric of space-time and helped shape the early universe. And in 2014, for the first time, scientists found evidence they might actually exist. Or did they? Even the boldest experiments can be vulnerable to the tiniest things. And we do mean tiny. The signal matched predictions almost perfectly, except for one thing. It was stronger than expected. This could mean more data, and the scientific community was on pins and needles. And after a thorough investigation, they discovered that their signal had been interfered with by space dust, skewing the data and providing a false positive. So the secrets of the early universe remained locked away, and scientists are trying to get more data from similar events in modern days, like black hole collisions. Some scientific blunders are just a rush to judgment, but in other cases, the scientists straight up got played. During the 1700s, the field of discovering fossils was just getting started. Dinosaurs still lay deep in the earth, and scientists like Johann Behringer were digging up smaller remnants of early life. Needing assistance with his dig, Behringer hired local teenagers in Bavaria and fell prey to one of the best teenage pranks of all time. His assistants apparently dug up stones that held unique types of fossils, worm-like animals, and a strange carved sun. Could these have been preserved animals or ancient artwork? Behringer was stunned by the discovery and quickly published a paper celebrating the remarkable stones. But even in the 1700s, not everyone was convinced. Some of his colleagues raised eyebrows at the bizarre carvings. Behringer, furious at the skepticism, stood by his findings. At a hearing, the truth was revealed. The prank was orchestrated by a rival professor of his, and Behringer fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. The stones were nothing but modern carvings. Behringer would forever have his name attached to what became known as Behringer's lying stones. Small hoaxes are easy to pull off, but a larger one draws more eyes. Most of these stories start with a scientist who wants to believe, but this one begins with a con. George Hull was a low-down con artist, known for card cheating and insurance fraud. But after an argument with a preacher, he had his biggest scheme yet, convincing people that the Nephilim of the Bible were actual giants who walked the earth. He bought a massive slab of gypsum, hired a sculptor, and created a massive 10-foot sculpture of a giant man. He then buried it near Cardiff, New York, and an absolute sensation broke loose. After about a year, Hull arranged for the statue to be unearthed, and it turned into a full-blown tourist attraction. Crowds flocked from miles around, eager to glimpse the mysterious Cardiff giant. Eventually, Hull sold the statue to a syndicate for $23,000, over $570,000 in today's money. The spectacle even caught the eye of P.T. Barnum, who offered to buy it. When the syndicate refused, Barnum did what Barnum did best. He built a replica and he put on his own show. The Cardiff giant was never taken seriously by scientists, but it didn't matter. The average person bought into it, and their attention is easy to lure away. No hoax, however, quite equaled the fervor over one that claimed to unlock the history of humanity. During the early 20th century, scientists were hard at work discovering long-lost species, including many of our ancestors. But archaeology was also very big business, and that enticed hucksters into the field. Hucksters like Charles Dawson. The amateur archaeologist became maybe the most famous man in his field when he revealed part of a human-like skull that he claims to belong to the missing link. This was supposedly the species that paved the way for the evolution of humanity, and back then many people took his claims at face value. Dawson would die only a few years later in 1916 and escape the reckoning to come. It wasn't until 1950, with the advent of carbon dating, that scientists were finally able to take a serious look at the skull bones Charles Dawson had presented. What they found shattered decades of belief. The skull wasn't from a unique species at all. It was believed to consist of a human skull with an altered mandible and some orangutan teeth. While Dawson was initially seen as a mastermind, many now believe that he may have been duped by ambitious schemers, set up to be the public face of one of scientists' most famous hoaxes. But no hoax ever quite captured the imagination like the next one. Cryptids. These mystery creatures have so many people fascinated with the idea that there are monsters among us. Some, like the Flatwoods Monster or Mothman, only appeared for a short time and vanished. Others, like the Loch Ness Monster, still have people looking for sightings. But none had as many sightings as Bigfoot, a shambling, towering, ape-man-like creature seen repeatedly walking on two legs through the woods of the United States, particularly in the Pacific Northwest. Could this be another missing link? Or could it be the biggest hoax ever created? There are plenty of Bigfoot hoaxers out there, with people presenting evidence of footprints or dung that are never quite proven. But the one thing that people couldn't explain was a blurry photo of the creature walking through the woods. It seemed like the genuine article, Until decades later, the man who took the photograph revealed that it was actually his buddy wearing a gorilla costume. This took the sales out of most Bigfoot discourse, and many scientists washed their hands of the search. Of course, some of the biggest false alarms aren't hoaxes, they're just a big mix-up. Astronomy has been around far longer than modern technology, and telescopes have been used to observe distant planets for centuries. As Earth's closest neighbor, Mars naturally became the focus of intense scrutiny. In 1877, an Italian astronomer, Giovanni Schiaparelli, made what seemed like a stunning discovery: strange markings etched across the Martian surface. He called them canali, meaning channels in Italian. But there was a translation mishap. Duolingo wasn't around in those days, so canali became canals in English. The uniform lines look too precise to be natural, and some scientists immediately jumped to the conclusion that this was a sign of life on Mars. One astronomer, Percival Lowell, even developed an elaborate theory regarding an ancient and long-extinct alien species behind them. But the actual answer was far closer to Earth. Technology in those days was far from foolproof, and the telescopes were impressive but not precise. The Martian canal theory persisted into the 1900s, with some scientists expressing skepticism. But it wouldn't die until the 1960s, when unmanned spacecrafts were sent to do flybys over Mars. For the first time, people could see clearly that these so-called canals were nothing more than streaks of dust blown across Mars by the powerful winds. And so the search for the secrets of Mars went back to ground zero. But the thing is, you don't have to be wrong to have an embarrassing scientific discovery. There are some that are completely right, but the scientist still isn't telling mom about it. The Ig Nobel Prize isn't your average science award. Since 1991, this wonderfully weird parody of the Nobel Prize has been handed out to researchers whose discoveries make people laugh. These awards honor the unusual and the imaginative, and they aim to promote attention for science, medicine, and technology. But they are also there to poke fun at just how strange and sometimes embarrassing science can be. The awards are given in multiple categories, which vary by year, but they parallel the Nobel Prize categories to a large extent. And some of these have earned the awards in style. One of the first Ig Nobel Prize winners in medicine was Alan Kilgerman, who had worked for years on a key problem: flatulence. Considered one of the experts in the causes and remedies for bloat and gassiness, he's known to most people as the inventor of Beano, an all-natural gas remedy that can be found on drugstore shelves to this day. While it's not likely that the average person would proudly admit to being the world's top fart scientist, the odds are that he has earned enough off of it to buy a whole lot of beans. And these men might be mockable, but we imagine a few men are very grateful. Accepting the 1993 Ig Nobel Prize for Medicine was a trio of men: James F. Nolan, Thomas J. Stillwell, and John P. Sands Jr., winning for their paper Acute Management of the Zipper Entrapped Penis. This might sound like a bit that came from a 1990s gross-out comedy, but it is a real medical problem that happens to unfortunate men every year. And they're no doubt thankful for this guide to not ripping your Johnson any further in a panic. And sometimes they invent a whole new category because someone deserved it just that much. John Featherstone of Massachusetts was a simple man with a simple dream. He wanted to see his favorite animal everywhere, and soon it was. He was the inventor of the pink flamingo lawn decoration, which has become synonymous with campy, kitschy Americana ever since it was created in 1957. With the 40th anniversary of his invention looming in 1996, the Ig Nobel Awards gave him a nod for art, and he became the first winner of the bizarre award to show up and accept it in person. But sometimes someone wins for something no one actually asked for. Dr. Paul Bosland had a prestigious position as the head of the Chili Pepper Institute at New Mexico State University. This research facility was responsible for breeding some of the spiciest peppers ever created, including some that became the source for many an ill-advised dare. But in 1999, he was given an Ig Nobel Prize for a very different creation, breeding the first spice-free jalapeno chili pepper. If you're wondering why anyone would ask for this, the answer is they probably didn't, but scientists did it anyway. And 1999 turned out to be a boom year for Ig Nobels for ill-advised inventions. The managed healthcare category, not given out every year, went to George and Charlotte Blonsky for their bold efforts in trying to speed up the process of childbirth and reduce the pain that mothers went through. A very worthy cause, except that their method was to create a centrifugal force device by strapping the woman to a circular table and then rotating that table at a high speed until the baby came out quickly. Now, if you're thinking that this has a high risk of baby yeeting, that is probably why it never made it to market. And the next invention also tried to solve a real problem, but probably created a few new ones. In South Africa, in the late 1990s, carjackings and gang attacks were a serious problem. Average citizens were becoming more and more afraid, and that's why Charles Fula and Michelle Wong came up with the blaster. This was designed to be a simple, woman-friendly tool to defend yourself and your car by outfitting it with a portable flamethrower that could be activated with a foot pedal. Shockingly, the product did make it to market, but the cost and high risks made it a financial failure. Well, at least the creators can point to their award win for peace. This next award has 2 winners, but maybe it should have had 3. In 2000, Andre Geim and Michael Berry won the Ig Nobel Prize in Physics for their experiment in the properties of magnets by using them to levitate a frog. While the accomplishment seemed absurd, their research was key in developing China's Lunar Gravity Research Facility. Those guys knew their stuff. In 2010, Geim won the Nobel Prize in Physics for his research on graphene, making him the first and only person to have both a Nobel Prize and an Ig Nobel Prize on his shelf. And sometimes all it takes is solving an age-old problem. How many times have people wondered what it would be like if their dog could talk? Maybe they want to know why Fifi is barking so much, or maybe they just wish that they could ask Rover for some relationship advice. But that's what Keiichi Sato, Dr. Matsumi Suzuki, and Dr. Norio Kogure tried to do with the Biolingual device. They claimed that it could automatically translate dog barks and noises to human language. The device is seen as erratic and overly sensitive to ambient noise, but pet owners still snapped it up. It was quickly followed by the Meowlingual project and the team winning the 2002 Ig Nobel Prize for Peace. And sometimes even a ridiculous discovery can have world-altering implications. The 2004 Ig Nobel Prize for Biology went to a quartet of American, Canadian, and Swedish scientists for their study of herrings and their unique communication methods, which would emerge from the place that most people would consider farting. Now, this would have key Cold War implications. When a Soviet submarine was stranded in Swedish waters, the Soviets insisted they weren't spying and they were led astray by navigational errors. Now, the scientists believe that this was actually caused by countless Cold War herrings sending up flatulent signals into the waters and messing up the sonar. This next award might sound ridiculous, but it could save lives. Gillian Clark became one of the youngest Ig Nobel Prize winners ever when she won it in 2004 for her study on the 5-second rule. Maybe she had seen one too many boys at her school pick something up off the floor and eat it. She studied a variety of foods that had been on the floor for 5 seconds and checked if they had been contaminated. Surprisingly, the average public floor was deemed to be unlikely to have significant contaminants compared to tiles that had been deliberately tainted, to which other people might say, just don't pick something up off the floor. And sometimes it's all about the methods, not the result. In 2006, the Biology Ig Nobel Prize went to a pair of Dutch scientists tackling one of humanity's deadliest threats, malaria. But instead of vaccines or high-tech gadgets, they went with cheese, specifically Limburger cheese. It turns out that malaria mosquitoes are just as attracted to its pungent smell as they are to human feet. The takeaway is that foot odor might be the unsung hero of public health. But the Ig Nobel jury was probably wondering how exactly they researched this. And this next scientist got the award for repelling a very different pest. It's been a plague of shop owners for time immemorial. Rowdy teens, maybe they're loitering in front of the store, blasting their music or skateboarding, and nearly taking out unsuspecting grandmas. And Howard Stapleton of Wales was tired of it, so he invented the electromechanical teenager repellent, a device that creates a high-pitched noise that apparently teenagers can hear more keenly than adults. That got him the 2006 Peace Award. But his invention has had much more success as a mosquito repellent than chasing off hooligans. No winner put more time and effort into his project than this one. Remember your mother telling you, "Don't crack your knuckles, you'll get arthritis." Well, apparently, that bothered Donald Unger a lot, and he decided to prove it wrong. And it only took him 50 years to do it. Over that time, he cracked the knuckles of his left hand twice a day or more, while never cracking the knuckles on his right hand. The result was no arthritis in either hand, and Unger was happy to put his mother's hypothesis to rest, and to pick up his 2009 award for medicine. Of course, it took so long that he'll likely have to wait till the afterlife to tell his mother what's what. Sushi lovers might want to pay attention to this next innovation. A team of 7 Japanese scientists took home the 2011 Chemistry Award for their tireless efforts to create a new fire alarm that would be impossible to sleep through, and their chosen weapon was wasabi. That's right, they turned the infamous green sushi condiment, known for turning nostrils into infernos, into a safety feature. The wasabi alarm used an airborne gas made of it to alert deaf people and get them out of bed in a hurry, making it essentially a mild but arguably delicious form of tear gas. However, the bold-flavored innovation never made it to market, and some scientists are all too willing to put their own bodies on the line for science. Brian Crandall and Peter Stahl were interested in discovering which bones could be dissolved inside the human digestive system and which could be a danger. So they did the only thing that made sense. They took a dead shrew, they parboiled it, and they swallowed it whole. Then, over the next several days, they carefully sorted through their excrement to see which bones came out the other end. For their bold efforts, they won the 2013 Award for Archaeology, and no doubt some very strange looks from their colleagues. And it wasn't the only case where the jury must have been going, ew. In 2020, 7 Kent State University researchers took home the award in materials science. They worked on developing an alternative method for skinning and butchering animals in cold climates with limited resources. The method they experimented with? Shards of frozen human feces. That's right, these people actually created a poop knife and used it to test its effectiveness on meat. The answer for how effective it was turned out to be not at all. But the ingenuity still impressed the jury. But they probably wore gloves while handing over the award. But no one earned the Ig Nobel Award more than these 3 intrepid explorers. In 2015, the Physiology and Entomology Award went to a duo of scientists, Justin Schmidt and Michael L. Smith, for their exhaustive research on insect stings. Schmidt had cataloged the stings of every stinging insect he could find and cataloged them by pain level. Meanwhile, Smith did a similar experiment, ranking the stings of honeybees based on location from least painful to most painful. These brave pioneers let the creatures sting them again and again. Smith took 25 stings from honeybees on every spot on his body, including the penis shaft, while Schmidt took 1 sting from every creature from bumblebee to bullet ant. And while their experiments may have been ill-advised, they earned a great party story from here to the end of time. Want to know some other ways science could go horribly wrong? Check out Freaky Experiments That Almost Destroyed the World, or watch Most Evil Experiments in the History of Mankind to discover what ethics-free science looks like.